Everyone, good morning. The time for convening has arrived. The Senate will come to order. At this time, I will ask all unauthorized personnel to exit the chamber. I recognize the senator from the 28th to speak to the journal.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning on this last day of February. I would like to wish one of my good servants and man of the people and guy helping me out in my office this year and helped our former rules chairman out, Ryan Comfort. It is his birthday today, so if y'all see Ryan, be sure and wish him a happy birthday. And I want to wish the rest of you happy Car Keys and Small Change Day. It's also National Chocolate Souffle Day, Floral Design Day, National Tooth Fairy Day, National Public Sleeping Day, it's Rare Disease Day, and World Spay Day. So it's a lot of great days out there. Want to thank all our pages that made their way up to the Capitol this morning and going to be serving the great people of the great state of Georgia. Our great lineup today consists of Hudson Dixon, Jack Huey, Lauren Brooks, Declan Cortez, Alexander G., Catherine Stribling and Parker Stribling, Raina Levine, Tricia Nanda Kumar, Brent Beckham, and Emma Lai Tam. So thank our pages today for all your great work. We appreciate y'all being here, and now get to work. So, Mr. President, the journal has been read and found to be correct.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Pages, for your hard work, and I appreciate the Rules Chairman recognizing them every day. It is recognition that's well-deserved. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? Chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. The first reading and references of Senate bills and resolutions. Mr. Secretary.
Senate Bill 258 by Senator Hatchett of the 50th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to the Georgia Child Advocate for the Protection of Children Act so as to provide for additional duties regarding legal representation of children and
family.
Senate Bill 259 by Senator Hatchett of the 50th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to general provisions regarding the Superior Court so as to move the Superior Court of Banks County from the Piedmont Judicial Circuit to the Mountain Judicial Circuit. Senate Bill 260 by Senator Hatchett of the 50th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to general provisions relative to the Department of Economic Development so as to authorize the establishment
regulated industries.
Senate Bill 261 by Senator Dolezal of the 27th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to general provisions for education so as to prohibit the use of political litmus tests and post-secondary educational. Senate Bill 262 by Senator Watson of the 11th and Goodman of the 8th, a bill to be entitled an act relating to ad valorem taxation of property generally so as to provide for the return of aircraft. Finance. Senate Bill 263 by Senator Watson of the 11th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to general provisions applicable to counties and municipal corporations so as to prohibit local governments from disconnecting interconnected public water
Insurance
systems.
And labor.
Senate Bill 264 by Senator Jackson of the 41st and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to the university system so as to provide that non-citizen students
Higher
with certain
education.
Senate Bill 265 by Senator Tillery of the 19th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to general provisions regarding notaries public so as to provide for electronic notarization of certain notarial acts using real-time audio video. Senate Bill 266 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to retirement and pensions so as to provide for a fiduciary duty to invest retirement assets solely in the financial interests of participants.
Retirement.
Senate Bill 267 by Senator Islam of the 7th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to disclosure of certain information to persons undergoing certain surgical or diagnostic procedures,
Health
failure
and
to
Human
comply.
Services.
Senate Bill 268 by Senator Islam of the 7th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to elementary and secondary education so as to provide for limitations on waiver and variance requests by local school systems requesting flexibility, to remove the requirement that local school systems requesting flexibility must select at least one waiver. Senate Bill 269 by Senator Islam of the 7th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to transfers or purchases of firearms subject to the NICS, information concerning persons who have been involuntarily. Senate Bill 270 by Senator Summers of the 13th, a bill to be entitled an act relating to access to medical cannabis cannabis so as to provide for legislative oversight to authorize the location of retail outlets for the dispensing of low.
Agriculture and Consumer
Senate Bill
Affairs.
271 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to the Georgia Superior Court Clerk's Cooperative Authority and signature and date of notarial act respectively.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 272 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to courts is amendment so as to supplement the duties of administrative judges to reestablish the Criminal Case
Rules.
Data Exchange Board. Senate Resolution 214 by Senator Yenna of the 47th and others, a resolution creating the Joint Study Committee on Local Auction
Rules.
Sales. Senate Resolution 221 by Senator Burns of the 23rd and others, a resolution creating the Joint Study Committee on Runoff
Rules.
Elections. That completes the order, Mr. President.
First reading of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 122 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to Higher Education Savings Plan and Georgia Achieving a
Higher
Better Life
education.
Experience. House Bill 147 by Representative Wade of the 9th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to elementary and secondary education as to provide for a school.
Education and youth.
House Bill 220 by Representative Leverett of the 123rd and Smith of the 18th, a bill to be entitled an act relating to property so as to provide for means of enforcement of condominium.
Judiciary.
House Bill 237 by Representative Hagan of the 156th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to state symbols as to designate the Southeast Georgia Soapbox Derby as the official soapbox derby of the state of Georgia, to provide for promotion of the Southeast Georgia Soapbox Derby, to provide for legislative findings, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes.
Economic development.
House Bill 254 by Representative Jenkins of the 136th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to the requirements of an official legal organ.
State and local government in general.
House Bill 268 by Representative Corbett of the 174th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to Criminal Justice Coordinating Council as to provide for the establishment
Public
of a grant.
safety.
House Bill 440 by Representative Stoner of the 40th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to student health in elementary and secondary education so as to authorize public and private schools to stock a supply of undesignated ready-to-use glucagon, to provide for a definition, to
Health
provide
and
for
human
requirements.
services.
House Bill 444 by Representative Reeves of the 99th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to lease pendants so as to revise when an action may operate as a lease.
Judiciary.
House Bill 480 by Representative Franklin of the 160th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to workers' compensation so as to change certain provisions related to workers' compensation
Insurance
benefits.
and labor.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Secretary will read reports of standing committees. It's going to be a few minutes.
The Senate Committee on Ethics has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 222, due pass by substitute, respectfully submitted Senator Burns of the 23rd District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Finance has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 220, due pass by substitute, respectfully submitted Senator Huffstedler of the 52nd District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Government Oversight has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 215, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 176, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted Senator Harbin of the 16th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 223, due pass. Senate Bill 197, due pass. Senate Bill 168, due pass. Senate Bill 164, due pass. Respectfully submitted Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 20, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 186, due pass. Senate Bill 225, due pass. Respectfully submitted Senator Walker of the 20th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 74, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 157, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 185, due pass. Senate Bill 201, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 182, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Public Safety has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 237, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 218, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 38, due pass. Respectfully submitted Senator Albers of the 56th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Reapportionment and Redistricting has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 124, due pass. Respectfully submitted Senator Eccles of the 49th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 39 to the Committee on Rules. Respectfully submitted, Senator Barrasso, the 28th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Science and Technology has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 181 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Payne of the 54th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on SLOGO has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 354 do pass. House Bill 391 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Ginn of the 49th District Chairman. 47th. Senate Committee on SLOGO General has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 113 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 114 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 213 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Ginn of the 47th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on SLOGO General has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 231 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Ginn of the 47th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Transportation has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 196 do pass by substitute. Senate Resolution 45 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 203 do pass. Senate Resolution 158 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dolezal of the 27th District Chairman. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Second readings.
Senate Bill 4 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others, Blind Persons Braille Literacy Rights and Education Act and Act. Senate Bill 31 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others, prosecuting attorneys, the reimbursement of expenses incurred by the Attorney General in prosecuting a criminal case or cases due to the failure of a district attorney to prosecute such criminal case or cases provide. Senate Bill 45 by Senator Anna Vitarte of the 31st and others, education, care of students being treated for epilepsy or seizure disorder provide. Senate Bill 55 by Senator Parent of the 42nd and others, counties, municipal corporations, and other governmental entities, regulation of businesses of persons under 18 years of age prohibit. Senate Bill 66 by Senator Hickman of the 4th and others, Superior Courts, Atlantic Judicial Circuit, additional judge provide. Senate Bill 92 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, prosecuting attorneys, oversight commission create. Senate Bill 98 by Senator Anna Vitarte of the 31st and others, local boards of education. Local Board of Education members from discussing individual personnel matters with school officials prohibit. Senate Bill 100 by Senator Hatchett of the 50th and others, unsecured judicial release. Limitation of unsecured judicial release in certain circumstances where the accused has a prior conviction for the offense of bail jumping or failure to appear provide. Senate Bill 127 by Senator Hickman of the 4th, excise tax, procedures for certain local governments to change the designated private sector nonprofit organization provide. Senate Bill 133 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others, juvenile code, a uniform process to assume custody of children as a result of disposition orders create. Senate Bill 148 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, nonprofit corporations comprehensively revise, simplify, and modernize said chapter. Senate Bill 199 by Senator Estevez of the 6th and others, State Employees Benefit Plan Council to establish health savings accounts require. Senate Bill 202 by Senator Rahman of the 5th and others, Public School Property and Facilities Outdoor Learning Spaces Pilot Program provide. Senate Bill 216 by Senator Brass of the 28th and others, Children and Youth Services, respite care for foster parents for longer periods of time pursuant to circumstances authorized. Senate Resolution 114 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others, Fleming, Charlie, recognized. Senate Resolution 140 by Senator Counsert of the 46th and others, Georgia General Assembly, general law for sports betting in this state provide. Senate Resolution 175 by Senator Brass of the 28th and others, Joint Study Committee on Dual Enrollment for Highly Skilled Talent at Younger Ages create. Senate Resolution 176 by Senator Brass of the 28th and others, Taiwan, commend. That completes the order, Mr. President.
It is now time for the morning roll call. Any senator wish to excuse another senator, please let your voice be heard. Our senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the following senators for business inside the Capitol: 5, 20, and 54.
5, 20, and 54?
Yes, sir.
All right, without objection, senators from the 5th, the 20th, and the 54th will be excused. Senator from the 29th.
Mr. President, I rise and ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 37th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, senator from the 37th is excused. Senator from the 17th.
There we go. Good morning, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 19th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, senator from the 19th is excused. Senator from the 22nd.
Morning. Ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 41st for business outside of the Capitol.
Without objection, senator from the 41st is excused. Is there any other motions to excuse? All right. Secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. Secretary, unlock the machine. All right. Come on, Pastor. You ready? How are you doing? Good morning. Everything good? Good. I told him to get your stuff out. Yes, Lord. You had to get that in. I guess there's two bills got to go together. Come on up, Pastor. So, yeah, we'll get it out. All right. Before I introduce Pastor today, I'd just like to recognize my as I called her last time, Commander-in-Chief right here, the First Lady of the Senate. My wife, Jan, is here today, so she's here to check on me, make sure y'all ain't beating up on me too bad, I know. So, but anyways, always glad to have you here, Jan. It is now my honor, and now time and my honor to recognize our senator from the 9th, who has our pastor of the day, and I've got to meet this young man earlier today in my office, and he and his wife, we're glad to have both he and his wife here with us today. And now, without further ado, I'll introduce the senator from the 9th for our Pledge of Allegiance and our chaplain of the day.
Good morning, members. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now our Georgia flag. Pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation. Great. All right, I have the extreme pleasure of introducing to you all today Reverend Trenton Dockery. He is right in the heart of Grayson, where I live. He and I had the pleasure of meeting while we were doing a community service on MLK, I believe, last year, and we delivered food to the community that day. We delivered pizzas to some of our families that were out of school that day, and he and I had the most wonderful conversation. He is just a joy to have in our community. He is pastor of the United Methodist Church in Grayson, Georgia. He is just an outstanding pillar in our community and a great leader. for our city of Grayson and over at the United Methodist Church. So without further ado, I introduce to all of you Reverend Trenton Dockery.
Well, good morning. It's an honor to be here. Give honor to God, honor to my wife who's here, Kristen. Want to thank Lieutenant Governor and fellow senators who are here, and especially Nikki Merritt for giving me this opportunity. I recently got a promotion to become the senior pastor at Grayson, so I'm grateful for that. And I was, thank you. I was also got the privilege of being a successful basketball coach for my 4-year-old daughter, who scored 2 buckets. First time she did that, yeah. And my wife gave me the distinct pleasure and responsibility of being the night captain to my 8-month-old daughter. She said she's done breastfeeding, no more waking up at night. Trenton, it's your responsibility. You got it from here. I carried her for 9 months. You got the rest. And, you know, I think part of it could have been because, you know, we'll never know as a man what it means to carry a child in that way. But I also believe she trusts me because when a mistake happens, I'm going to handle it maturely. That's how trust is built. It's not about doing things the right way each and every time. It's about when there is a mistake, when you made a decision that didn't work out. You don't blame it on anyone else. You don't lie about it. No, you face it. You deal with it head on. I think that's a mark of good leadership. Flawlessness is no longer possible for any of us. I look in the mirror and I see gray hairs now. I've gained more weight than I want to admit. So flawlessness is not possible, but maturity is. And that's what Jesus calls us to when he talked to us in Matthew 5. He says, "Be thou perfect, for I am perfect." It's not a call for flawlessness or perfection in that way. It's a call to maturity. The early church faced their first big problem in Acts chapter 6. The people who followed the perfect Son of God made a mistake. The Hellenistic, Greek-speaking Jewish widows were not getting their daily distributions of food. And that was discrimination because the Aramaic widows, the ones who spoke Aramaic, were getting their distribution of food. So those who watched the perfect Son of God, who's healed and did everything right, made their first big mistake as the church was being built. How would they respond? How would they respond to this mistake that they made? I think they teach us a lesson. They said, we can't stop preaching the word and doing the things that are necessary to grow the church, but what we can do is to ensure that this doesn't happen again, that there's no more discrimination in our community. Let us raise up new leaders who will make sure that the Hellenistic widows get their daily distribution of food. You see, they teach us that image management was not what they were going to be leading from. They were going to lead from mission fulfillment. And if we are about fulfilling the mission of helping Georgians, helping our families, leading our country, we cannot be a people that hold on to our egos. If we make a mistake, we have to face it head on and learn from someone else who can make sure that we don't make that same mistake again. And that's what the disciples did. They raised up Hellenistic-speaking leaders to make sure that the widows got the food that they needed. Without their leadership, we don't get Stephen, And we also probably don't get Paul, who was pierced in his heart to see what God was doing in the world. So I ask you, no matter if you are a senator here, a home person, or a night captain like I am, it's not about getting it right every time. When you make a mistake, will you handle it maturely? That's what our world needs to see in all of our leaders. It's maturity, because flawlessness is no longer possible. May I be able to pray for you? Lord of heaven, thank you that the call to perfection is not a call of flawlessness. It is a call to maturity. You make us mature as we confess and then repent. You purify our hearts. So that, Lord, when we face challenges, even sometimes of our own doing, we learn from it. And we're better as a result. I pray that over each and every person that is here. May they live maturely and model your love in this world. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. Amen.
Senator Burns. Senator Burns. It is always a pleasure to have our Doctor of the Day. We really do appreciate these men and women from around the state of Georgia coming and offering their time and services to the people of the General Assembly. And to introduce our Doctor of the Day, I call on our good friend, the Senator from the 23rd, to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. It's my honor to introduce our Doctor of the Day, Dr. David Fallaw. Dr. Fallaw serves as the Chief Medical Information Officer at Augusta University Health in Augusta, Georgia. He provides leadership and direction for the development and implementation of the clinical system strategic and technology plan for the organization. He hails from Augusta, Georgia, was educated at Wofford in South Carolina, went on to the University of South Carolina Medical School, and then did his residency at AU. He's a proud member of the faculty there, and we're delighted to have Dr. David Fallaw as our Doctor of the Day. Please welcome Dr. Fallaw.
Well, thank you, Senator Burns, and thank you, everybody here. It is such an honor and a privilege to be able to assist today. And first, I want to thank you for all your leadership in leading this great state of Georgia. As most physicians, you start off really going into medicine to take care of patients. When I went to MCG, I actually found an additional passion as well, and that's for teaching. And so I've been there for, this will be soon to be my 18th year, teaching residents, medical students, and our future physicians of the state of Georgia. I wanted to thank you again for your support for the Medical College of Georgia as well. I know this is the start of the season, so there's all sorts of yellow snow outside, so if you need any assistance, I'm right down the hall. And thank you again, and it's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Are there any unanimous consents? Chair hears none. It is now time. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? I can't believe this. Oh, there we go. Senator from the 15th. I was getting worried there, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to make a point, notation in the footnote of history regarding black history in America. Often called the mother of the blues, Ma Rainey was known for her deep-throated voice and mesmerizing stage presence that drew packed audience and sold hit records in the early 20th century. Also a songwriter, her lyrics and melodies reflected her experiences as an independent woman. Ma Rainey was born Gertrude Melissa Nix Pridgett in Columbus, Georgia, on April 26, 1886. Her parents, Thomas and Ella Allen Pridgett, were minstrel performers. Rainey displayed a talent for singing at a young age and began performing as a teenager. She made her debut with the Bunch of Blackberries review at the Springer Opera House in Columbus, Georgia, that still stands. She then began singing with traveling vaudeville sets in talent shows, tent shows, honky-tonks, and carnivals. It was on the performance circuit that she met comedian, singer, and dancer Will Paul Rainey, and the two got married in 1904. They formed a double act, Ma and Pa Rainey, and toured with various African-American minstrel troupes and vaudeville groups. Most notably, the Rabbit-Foot Minstrels. After a dozen years of marriage, Ma Rainey and her husband separated. Rainey then created her own show, Madam Gertrude Ma Rainey and her Georgia Smart Set. Rainey, the mother of the blues, was influential for bridging the traditions of vaudeville and authentic Southern blues. The blues descended from the call and response storytelling songs of West Africa. Captive African passed them down through the generations while enslaved in the Western Hemisphere. Rainey's strong voice and characteristic moaning style of singing also fueled her success. Life as a traveling entertainer was not easy for African Americans in the early decades of the 20th century. The Theater Owners Booking Association, TOBA, arranged many of their performances. TOBA was well known for its exploitive working conditions and the low wages it paid African American performers. Many eventually claimed that TOBA stood for Tough on Black Artists. Still, Rainey was a star on the Toba circuit. She attracted large audiences of adoring fans across the South and Midwest. Her performances drew racially mixed, though still segregated audiences, demonstrating her wide appeal. Her 2-hour show usually began with jazz numbers by the band and performance by a land of chorus girls. After comedy routines and other acts, Rainey would make her grand entrance and dazzle the audience with songs like I Ain't Got Nobody, A Good Man Is Hard to Find, and her encore, C.C. Rider Blues. Rainey signed a recording contract with Paramount Records in 1923, making her one of the earliest recording blues musicians between 1923 and 1928. She recorded almost 100 records, many of them national hits that are now part of the American musical canon. Her 1924 recording of C.C. Rider Blues, for which she was accompanied by young Louis Armstrong, was added to the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry in 2004. Rainey's songwriting was notable for its raw depiction of life from the perspective of a woman struggling with heartbreak, depression, and other maladies. But amidst these difficulties, Rainey's protagonists did not rely on male partners or submit to the rules society tried to inflict on them. In the song Oh Papa Blues, Rainey tells of the wrongs a former lover committed against her, but her lamentation soon turned to scheming for revenge. Prove It On Me blues, etc. Rainey's cultural legacy is profound. She was a mentor to the legendary blues singer Bessie Smith, and the two were rumored to have a romantic relationship as well. Rainey made a home in Chicago for many of the 1920s years and early 1930s. When she lost her recording contract with Paramount, the company claimed her style of blues had fallen out of fashion. She resumed touring and performed at private parties. Following the deaths of her sister and mother, Rainey returned to Columbus, Georgia, to live with her brother. She owned and managed 2 theaters there and was active in the Friendship Baptist Church that still stands, where her brother was a deacon. Rainey passed away from a heart disease ailment on December 22nd, 1939. She was 53 years old. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Senator from the 28th, you wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Senator from the 28th is texting away. Would you like to rise on a point of personal privilege? And please be mindful of, trying to keep points of personal privilege between 3 and 5 minutes, Senator, if you don't mind.
Mr. President, I only need about 14 minutes of your time. So, ladies and gentlemen, today I just rise to simply invite you to a lunch being hosted by the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority. Our very own Hunter Hill is their director, and as many of y'all know, GFA provides low-interest loans for water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste infrastructure, and provides funding for energy efficiency and renewable energy programs. So great programs that our local communities take advantage of. Again, they will be in room 514 of the CLOB from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. for lunch. So they will feed you. Hope to see you there.
Thank you, Senator. Senator, your suit's fitting a little better this year. Your wife's got you on a good routine right now. So, Senator from the 14th, you'd like rise on a point of personal privilege?
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. I'm proud this morning to welcome students from Holcomb Bridge Middle School who are here as part of their Model United Nations program with their teachers, Ms. Minkovitz and Ms. Wright. I always have to commend students who take a special interest in civic life and in our government processes, whether it's international or here in the state of Georgia. Really excited to welcome them. If y'all are in the room, if you could stand so you could be recognized. Thanks for being here, guys. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from the 16th, would you like to rise on point of personal privilege?
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate you recognizing me. On your desk, you will find a document. What's interesting, Georgia, let me start here. Georgia is the #1 state to do business in, but we are also the #1 state for litigation. We have moved up and past California, and on your desk you will find what's called the judicial hellhole, which talks about the issues that are going on in Georgia right now. Georgia is facing more and more issues of litigation and what's going on, and the insurance companies are also losing money in those issues. Personal lines auto is losing money. When they bring $1 in, $1.04 is going out. If you go to commercial auto, you're going to see $1.14 or more. And what's happening is the judgments are being higher and higher and higher. Also, just premises liability issues that are going on, the same thing. And what happens is that when businesses cannot get insurance or it gets so costly, they move to other states. They move to a state that has a better environment so that capital is moved. We had a major carrier, national carrier, in 1 year, their loss ratio moved up 10%. Part of that because of parts and inflation and what's going on, but we need to be mindful of that businesses that cannot be insured, that cannot buy insurance, in many places the market has just dried up where they cannot get it. I just ask us to really consider that if we want to continue to be #1, we've got to consider where we go in the area of litigation and what we allow judgments to be. I ask you to review this because it's going to affect every business that you deal with and even persons that you deal with, and we need to be mindful of that. If we want to keep Georgia #1, we also need to make sure that we're not #1 in the things that we don't need to be #1 in. We need to be responsible to what's going on. Trucking, a major part, we need to look at that, the issues that are going on, as I mentioned, and also the issue of just buying liability coverage. I have a client right now who has a contractual agreement to carry higher liability limits, but nowhere in the market can we find it. So therefore, he's got to make adjustments of where he does business and what he does. So with that, Mr. President, I thank you for the time and ask that each of you review this report and understand what we are faced with in Georgia. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 34th, would you like to rise on point of personal privilege?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I rise to close out Black History Month, and I will do that by starting in Abbeville, South Carolina. As a kid, I've heard about Abbeville, South Carolina. As a matter of fact, the Martins and the Hunters are my family line, who said that when the forefathers arrived here on the coast of South Carolina, a group from Martins and Hunters decided they wanted to keep going into this great land. They ended up coming through Atlanta at the time where the famous hot dog place, everybody know up the street from Georgia Tech, is what? The Varsity. They found some land that they decided to invest in down the street from the Varsity on North Avenue. At that time, the mediums that's in the street today were troughs where horses drank from. But some of the family didn't want to stay in Atlanta, so they kept going and went up to, where are they? They are up in Chicago. And they settled there. That family happened to be my roots. And I was just so proud to learn about our history. But the irony is, many of those family members who are still alive and were alive when I was elected more than 30 years ago were very proud to say that they had a daughter, a niece, a cousin, a family member in this chamber. Many of them came down for the reunion, family reunions. Many of you might have those as well. But when we walked through this body into this chamber, into this building, they could not imagine what the forefathers would be saying and doing, knowing that one of their own is in this chamber. It's awesome to listen to what we used to call as children, the old people talk about the old time, but keep living. It's a joy to be getting old. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, Lieutenant Governor. I'll yield.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 32nd, do you wish to rise on a point of personal privilege?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here with some sad news from one of my counties. Cobb County Sheriff's Deputy died Sunday while out jogging, and the Paulding County Sheriff's Department and Fire Rescue tried to save his life unsuccessfully. He was 58 years old. His name was Deputy Smith, and Gregory Smith, and he'd been with the Sheriff's Department for 15 years. And this came just a couple months after we lost two other sheriff's deputies who were killed in the line of duty in Cobb County. So if it's okay with you, Mr. President, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence in honor of our Cobb County Sheriff's deputy that died.
The Senator has requested that we stand in a moment of silence. If you please do that, we'd be appreciative.
Amen. Thank you, Mr.
Amen.
President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 55th, we'd like to rise on a point of personal privilege. Our minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I would like to not only recognize that today is the last day of Black History Month, but February is also celebrated as Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. In 2007, when I represented the city of Clarkston in DeKalb County, I had a constituent, Brittany Charnay Wells, that was killed by her boyfriend and dumped in a dumpster. And this was all because of teen dating violence and one person wanting to control the other. I did a resolution for her family and recognized her as a statistic in our state. And also I've discovered that the President of the United States has done a proclamation on National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month for 2023. Across America, young people are impacted by abusive relationships, suffering in silence, as they threaten with or subjected to physical violence, sexual violence, psychological aggression, or stalking from a current or former intimate partner. During National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month, we bring this scourge out of the shadows. We want to recommit to promoting healthy relationships and join together with a clear message to survivors. You are not alone. Support is close by, and justice is within reach. Each year, around 12% of American high schoolers experience physical or sexual violence at the hands of an intimate partner. Young women, transgender teens, and gender nonconforming youth are disproportionately affected. Dating violence can also occur on social media, online, and through other electronic communications in the form of cyber stalking, non-consensual distribution of intimate images, and other technology-facilitated harms. This trauma not only affects survivors' health, safety, and aspiration as teenagers, it can also follow them into adulthood and increase the risk of violence in future relationships. So I say to you this day, let's change our behavior. When we see it, say something. Let's win with love. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield.
You have a local consent calendar. Oh, excuse me, a consent calendar of privilege resolutions here. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to the adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? Chair hears none, and the resolution on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw or commit? Senator from the...
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent that SB 254 be withdrawn from the Committee on Insurance and Labor and be committed to the Committee on Banking and Financial Institutions.
Senator from the 28th has moved that Senate Bill, what was it again? 254 be moved from the Insurance and Labor Committee over to the Banking and Financial Institutions. Read the caption.
Senate Bill 254 by Senator Brasso, the 28th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 10 of the OCGA relating to selling and other trade practices so as to provide requirements for earned wage access services, to provide for fees that may be charged for such services, to provide that earned wage access payments are non-recourse and are not loans, to provide that permitted fees are not interest, to provide for definitions, to provide for applicability, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
So the senator has moved. Is there objection to the senator's request? I'm assuming, Mr. Chairman, that you've checked with both the chairman of banking and insurance on this, and they're all good with this? All right. Is there any objection? Without objection, we will move Senate Bill 254 from insurance and labor to banking and financial institutions. You have before you a consent calendar of local bills. Mr. Secretary, have any objections been filed on any of the bills of the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Senator from the 55th, what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, do we have a quorum on the floor?
I'm sorry, say it again,
Do
Senator.
we have a quorum?
We're working on one right now. Hold on.
Like we might be.
Senator, we're about to find out because we're about to vote on slow go, but you could call for a roll call vote right now if you like. It kind of looks like we're close to a quorum, but I'd be happy to do a roll call vote if you like.
If we have a quorum, then I don't need a roll call vote. This House Bill 391 requires a 2/3 vote.
House Bill 391.
On the Senate local consent calendar.
The question is on House Bill 391 on your. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on the State and Local Government Operations, which is favorable to the passage of the bill on the local consent calendar? Chair hears none. The report on the committee is agreed to. The question is on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machines. I recognize the senator from the 12th for
Yes,
parliamentary
sir.
inquiry.
Mr. President, I would like to offer a motion to reconsider HB 391, please.
So the senator has requested that HB 391 that is on the consent calendar be reconsidered. So that is the notice that we will take up that bill separately in the morning, or that resolution separately in the morning. On the passes of the remainder of the resolutions on the local consent calendar, the yeas are 37 and the nays are 14. And having these local consent calendar having received the requisite constitutional majority are therefore passed. But we'll take up HB 391 that the senator from the 12th requested. It needs 2/3 votes, and so we will take it up first thing tomorrow at her request. So thank you for that, Senator. I recognize the senator from the 17th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate adhere to its substitute to House Bill 18, that a conference committee be appointed.
Read the caption.
Mr. President, the House insists on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute and has appointed a committee of conference to confer with a like committee on the part of the Senate on the following bill of the House. House Bill 18 by Representative Burns of the 159th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending July 30th, 2023, known as the General Appropriations Act. The Speaker has appointed on the part of the House Representatives Hatchett of the 155th, Abstration of the 104th, and Jones of the 47th. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The senator has moved that the Senate insist on its position and that a conferee committee be appointed. Are there objections to that motion? Chair hearing none. The conferees for our position on HB 18 will be senator from the 18th, senator from the 51st, and senator from the 19th. I recognize the senator from the 17th for another motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I kept waiting for the senator from the 17th, but I guess I'm getting closer. Mr. President, I move the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 18 to the House.
The senator has moved that we immediately transmit HB 18 to the House. Is there objection? Without objection, motion is granted. Moving on to the rules calendar. SB 128. Secretary, read the resolution. Read the caption. Excuse me.
Senate Bill 128 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7 of Chapter 20 of Title 47 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, the Public Retirement Systems Investment Authority law, so as to raise the limit for the total percentage of funds that the peace officers annuity and benefit fund may invest in alternative investments, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Retirement recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Williams of the 25th District Chairman. The auditor's note is attached. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from the 56. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a fairly simple bill. Most of you are familiar with the POAB, the Police Officer Annuity Benefit. That is the pension fund for our law enforcement officers throughout the state. There are no state appropriations that go to that fund. It has been managed very well. It's a great tool, and it is funded by our folks that are actually serving in law enforcement through their dues as well as fines and fees. This will take their investment portfolio to allow them to invest up to 15% in alternative investments. And for those of us that have invested in stocks and bonds over the last year or two, you would know alternative investments are providing a much higher return on investment and have done very well for the fund managers. If there are no questions, I will yield the well.
You do have some questions, Senator. Senator from the 46, you wish to rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Senator yield?
Always to my dear friend.
Mr. Chairman, would you give us a little clearer definition of what's meant by these alternative investments?
Certainly. Alternative investments can be things such as private equity funds outside of the normal stocks and bonds that you would buy. It could be real estate holdings. It could be a variety of different things. We have great fund managers that work at the POAB and other pension funds. This actually started years ago with the firefighter pension fund. And it's important that you have a good mix and diversity of investments, so as things go up and down, you get the proper results and return on those retirement accounts.
Senator, further yield?
Certainly.
Now, does that also include derivatives, stock options, commodities, and other more speculative type investments?
It would include a variety of those investments, yes.
Senator, further yield?
Yes.
I have concerns that, I mean, you say in the last 2 years maybe people did good in these type of investments, but you know, the stock market, especially the more aggressive parts like NASDAQ, went down 30% last year. I can only imagine that options on those kind of stocks may have dropped even more dramatically. Do you have any indication of what the returns were in the last 12 months?
I don't have the specific data over the last 12 months, Senator. However, I can tell you with 100% confidence, since we started doing this over a decade ago in different pension funds, the alternative investments have far outperformed our traditional investments. And again, like everything else, you want to mix in your investment portfolio, just like all of us might have in a 401k or property or other things, as we build up nest eggs in order to provide for retirement. This fund and their fund managers are doing the very same thing.
Senator, further yield?
Yes.
Well, then why wouldn't you go ahead and let them spend up to 100% on these aggressive investments if they're doing so well? Is there a reason to limit how much they can gamble with?
Senator, I would take that as a friendly amendment. I have no problem with the fund managers doing what they need to get done, but this was their request to move it up incrementally to show their members that as it continues to progress, it's a good return on investment.
Thanks, Senator.
Thank you.
You have no more questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd urge your favorable consideration to support our law enforcement throughout the state.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 3. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Have a message from the House. We're going to interrupt the rules calendar for a second. Got a message from the House. Secretary, read the caption.
House Resolution 280 by Representative Abstration of the 104th, a resolution calling a joint session of the House of Representatives and the Senate for the purpose of hearing a message from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, inviting each other Justice of the Supreme Court and each Justice of the Court of Appeals to be present at the joint session and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize the Majority Leader to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, you see the House resolution before you. House Resolution 280 basically calls for a joint session of the House and the Senate. It's one of the most important and exciting days of our session is to hear from the judiciary. So the State of the Judiciary hearing will be March the 8th at 11 a.m. You will need to leave the chamber here at around 10:45 and walk over to the House chamber, and we will hear from our Chief Justice. Mr. President, I'm happy to take any questions, or I'll yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator, but I'll wait for your motion when you get back to your,
Thank you very much.
your chair. Is there objection to the resolution that the Majority Leader just spoke on? Without objection, the motion is adopted. I recognize the Majority Leader for a motion.
Thank you very much. I move that we immediately transmit House Resolution 280 back to the House.
Majority Leader has moved that we immediately transmit House Resolution 280 immediately back to the House. Is there objection? Without objection, the motion is granted. Back to the rules calendar. SB 83. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 83 by Senator Jackson of the 41st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7 of Chapter 5 of Title 16 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to stalking so as to revise the eligibility of restraining orders to provide for related matters. The Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the Senator from the 41st to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today and ask for your favorable consent on Senate Bill 83. This is a small bill that addresses a really large problem. What we know is that there are many victims of stalking where the first symptom that they are in trouble is that they are being stalked in the shared home with their intimate partner. The most egregious story that I've heard from the advocates of this is that there was a woman who was living in a shared domicile with her partner. They were no longer really together. She was staying in the guest bedroom. But because he was stalking her, because he was tracking her phone, her vehicle, anytime she would try to make an effort to get out, she was not very able to do it. But one day she did manage to get out, and she drove to the police department, and she asked them to help her. And the police asked her, well, is he hitting you? Because if he's hitting you, then you can get a domestic violence TPO. And she says, well, no, he's not hitting me, but he's following me everywhere. When I go to the bathroom, he's opening the door to check on me and make sure I'm not using my phone, or when I go into my separate bedroom. And so she returned with no TPO, no alternatives, because the police department says, if this is happening in this home where the stalker lives, then there's no protections for you. And so she returned home. He looked at the tracker that he had and realized that she was probably trying to get some help and was really angry with her. And then the next day she decided to pack a go bag, just a little bag to be able to get out. And he watched her in her bedroom on his camera, watched her packing that go bag, and that was the moment that he chose to move from the stalking to the violence. And he went in when he saw that she was packing a go bag, and then he proceeded to beat her. If we had had this bill, she could have received a temporary protective order before he ever laid hands on her. And so that's what this bill does. I want to be clear. I've been working on this for 3 years. I've been working with criminal defense attorneys and with prosecuting attorneys and all the advocates to try to get this right. We have not changed the definition of stalking at all when it comes to the criminal code. We are simply saying that, listen, if this is happening in a person's home, a shared home, then they can go to a judge and receive a temporary restraining order so that they can get help. With that, Mr. President, I will stand for questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Well, then I ask for your favorable consent. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 3. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Good job, Senator. Moving on, Senate Bill 149. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 149 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Title 11 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to sales under the Commercial Code so as to enact the Georgia Door-to-Door Sales Act, to provide for a short title, to provide for definitions, to require sellers to furnish to buyers receipts and copies of any contracts, to require sellers to provide notice of how to cancel a sale. The Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowsert of the 46th District Chairman. Regulated Industries and Utilities offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 149, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Title 11 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to sales under the Commercial Code so as to enact the Georgia Door-to-Door Sales Act, to provide for a short title, to provide for definitions. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 56. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm proud to bring Senate Bill 149 in front of the Senate body today, the Georgia Door-to-Door Sales Act. This is modeled closely after the Federal Trade Commission's National Door-to-Door Cooling Off Rule, which gives consumers the opportunity to reconsider a very large purchase that may have been taken advantage of them by an aggressive door-to-door salesman. Now, this is tightly written to control certain things that have happened throughout our state where door-to-door aggressive salesmen took advantage of our most vulnerable citizens, our senior citizens, and those who maybe were not capable of making a decision of that magnitude at the moment. So this simply allows a 30 business day cooling off period for products or services that achieve two of the following three things. One, it costs $10,000 or more. It includes leasing or financing of 10 years or more, or are eligible for federal tax credits that are presented by a salesperson to be eligible for such credits. What is this really about? This is about some companies that were representing solar solutions to folks throughout our state, and unfortunately sometimes sold people things from $50,000 to $150,000, ultimately causing them great financial harm and not producing a return on investment. I want to give a quick shout out to Fox 5 Atlanta investigative reporter Randy Travis, who in the last couple of years did a series of investigative news stories showing how these rogue folks, who are mostly from out of state, took advantage of our vulnerable citizens. This will hopefully assure they have the ability to reconsider, to talk to family members, friends, church members, and make sure they're getting the right advice to do what's good for them. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I will yield the well and ask for favorable consideration.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machines. On the passage of the bill, yeas are 51 and nays are 3. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Moving on to Senate Bill 169. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 169 by Senator Payne of the 54th and others, the bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 22-754 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to procedures to be followed by disciplinary officer, panel, or tribunal in public schools and review so as to provide for limits on the extension of hearing dates for student discipline tribunals, to require local school systems to provide appropriate grade level instructional materials to any student subject to in-school suspension. The Senate Committee on Education and Youth recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon of the 45th District Chairman. Senate Committee on Education and Youth offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 169, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 22-754 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to procedures to be followed by disciplinary officer, panel, or tribunal in public schools and review so as to provide for limits on the extension of hearing dates for student discipline tribunals, to require local school systems to provide appropriate grade level instructional materials to any student subject to in-school suspension, short-term suspension, or long-term suspension pending completion of a student discipline tribunal. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 33rd, what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 52nd for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 52nd is excused. Thank you, Senator. I recognize the author of the bill, Senator from the 54th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Friends, I bring this bill as a simple bill, but a very important bill. In regard to public school disciplinary procedures, this bill, Senate Bill 169, allows for a disciplinary hearing to be held no later than 15 days after the beginning of a suspension if the parent and school system both agree. Senate Bill 169 also requires the school system to provide appropriate and grade level instructional material to any student having suspended from school. A Georgia Department of Ed study found that of students in the 8th to 10th grade missing just 11 to 14 days of instruction decreases their odds of graduating by 25%. As I said, that's what makes this a very important bill. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I will yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Senate Bill 19. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 19 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 15 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to courts so as to provide for collection of passport application and processing fees by clerks of superior courts and probate court judges, to provide for written report disclosures, to provide for use of such fees. The Senate Committee on Government Oversight recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harbin of the 16th District Chairman. Senate Committee on Government Oversight offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 19, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 15 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to courts so as to provide for collection of passport application and processing fees by clerks of superior courts and probate court judges, to provide for written report disclosures, to provide for use of such fees, to provide for local acts and local agreements. Senator Brass of the 28th offers the following amendment, Amendment 1, to amend the Senate Committee on Government Oversight substitute to Senate Bill 19 by replacing lines 33 through 40 with the following. The county governing authority shall pay a passport fee salary supplement to the clerk under the subdivision. During a calendar year, the amount of such supplement shall be the first $7,500 of such passport fees as disclosed in the report required by division. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 32nd. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill addresses passport fees retained as personal income by superior court clerks and probate judges. About 78 clerks of court and 8 probate judges are currently processing U.S. passport applications in Georgia, in addition to post offices, libraries, and some other facilities. In about 50 counties, clerks or probate judges keep the fees as personal income over and above their salaries and benefits. There's a processing fee of $35, which goes directly to the clerk or probate. This is handled different ways in different counties by these elected constitutional officers. Some split the fees between the county and the clerk or probate's office in different ways, including one of my counties, Cherokee County, which splits between the county and the clerk's office. And others allow the fees to go directly to a clerk or probate's bank account. Although this has apparently been in place for a number of years, I first learned about it last fall in media coverage in one of my counties, Cobb, where the clerk had taken home about $425,000 over a 2-year period, in addition to her $170,000 annual salary. These large numbers have also been happening in a number of other counties with high volumes of passports. Apparently, there had been previous attempts to change this formula dating back to 2012 that did not make it through the House. Passport processing takes place on county property using county taxpayer resources and county staff. In my former county, Fulton, the Fulton County Commission passed a resolution February 1st denouncing the retention of passport fees as personal compensation. This bill requires disclosure of the fees. Section 1 calls for the fees to be shared between the county and the clerk's office with a 50-50 split that can be changed either by a local bill or written agreement with the county. The bill authorizes that $7,500 can be kept by the clerk as a salary supplement with disclosure. Section 2 does the same thing, but for the probate judges, and the effective date is January 1st, 2024. There is an amendment by the senator from the 28th that exactly lines up Section 1 and Section 2 and allows the $7,500 supplement to be adjusted by either a local bill or a written agreement with the county government authority. This amendment fixes all the concerns that I have heard from the clerks and gives flexibility to adjust that $7,500 supplement. I support the amendment. I hope that you'll agree with me that passport fees collected by county elected officials using county resources should be disclosed, and that a reasonable agreement should be in place as to how the fees are handled. With that, I'm happy to yield for questions.
You do have a few questions, Senator. Senator from the 37th, you wish to rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the lady yield?
I yield.
So I know there's some folks who are watching this online and some people in the public who are trying to get their mind around this. Isn't it true that a lot of folks in our community were almost in disbelief of the current state of the law? So am I to understand, Senator, that the current state of the law allows fees on passports through our clerk's offices to be collected and a large percentage of those fees be actually retained by the clerk themselves as personal income? Is that what this bill addresses?
Yes, sir. In fact, in my county, that money was not going through the county financial department and was going straight to a Wells Fargo account.
So in our county in Cobb, what was the estimate over a 2-year period? How much personal income did the clerk in our county take by virtue of this otherwise legal process?
$425,000 over a 2-year period.
Of personal income over 2 years, and this bill eliminates that and allows it to be no more than how much, Senator?
It currently, in this version of the bill, it requires that the amount is split between the county and the clerk's office, but it also allows a supplement up to $7,500. With the amendment, it would allow that amount to be adjusted upward with agreement of the county commission or county governing authority with either a written agreement or a local bill.
And I'll just wrap by saying, isn't it true, people in our community have been outraged by this practice, and I thank you for the bill. This addresses good government and transparency in a way that citizens of the state can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I will say that the public were not the only people blindsided by this arrangement that was happening. In fact, many in our county government were blindsided as well. Thank you for the questions.
Senator from the 9th, you wish to rise for a question?
Senator, do you yield?
Sure.
Few questions. So the past clerk was Mrs. Keaton, is that true?
Yes.
And she served for 8 years, that is also true?
Yes.
Okay. And during that time, she was too collecting passport fees. I think for most of her, or the last end of her tenure, I think she was receiving over 25,000 for those months, her last months that she was in office, because she opened up a passport facility in Cobb. Is that true?
I'm going to have to take your word for that number, Senator, but that arrangement was taking place towards the end of her term. And as I mentioned earlier, I was not aware that that was taking place. And had I been aware of it, I would have had this bill in 2018 when I first got down here.
Okay. Is it also not true that ACCG has brought this issue up to this body before? It was 10 years ago. Is that not true?
That's my understanding.
Okay. So help me understand why has it been taking so long to change this policy? Ms. Keaton in for 8 years, 10 years this was an issue, got dropped. Now that it became media attention, now we're trying to change it again. So just help me understand, why is this so urgent right now, whereas it was not before?
I can't speak for what happened before 2017 because I wasn't here then. And as I mentioned, I just became aware of this problem because it was brought to the attention of the public by the media. And that is when I first started digging into it and trying to find out what was going on. But my understanding of why it wasn't fixed a long time ago was that the House was resistant to passage of the bill.
Okay. Does the Senator refer to you?
Yes.
Do you know why the House would have been opposed?
I do not know.
Okay.
I don't deal with the House inside baseball a lot.
Does the Senator refer to you?
Yes.
Okay. So is it true that this will hurt? I know in our larger counties, they're drawing some nice salaries as a elected official. Some of them are making six figures, but our counties outside of the metro area, they are not. So is it true that this would more so hurt them if we change this policy?
Senator, I would disagree with that, and I have been working with the various clerks. Some of them are from rural counties, trying to get a better idea of the numbers and what the actual correct number would be for the amount of passports that are being processed. Obviously, there was a spike during post-pandemic, but things seem to be settling down from that standpoint. And I think that the flexibility that is in the bill and also in the amendment is going to is going to fix the problem that the rural clerks have.
Okay, thank you.
Senator from the 2nd, you wish to ask a question?
Does the Senator yield?
Absolutely, thank you.
Senator, this is, my question is, it seems that we spend a lot of time in this body legislating for one or two counties. As I have continued to say, I don't live in Atlanta, I don't live in the metro area, I live down I-16 in Chatham County. And my concern for this measure is this impacts the counties outside of the metro area that we seem to be so fascinated to regulate. So, Senator, my question is, have you worked with the local Board of Commissioners to address this issue without bringing a statewide bill that would have broad impact over what everybody does that's not in Atlanta?
Well, Senator, it's not actually just two counties. There are several large counties that have the same problem. But I have talked to anyone who's been willing to come and talk to me about the issue, and I've tried to address their concerns. And I think my original thought was that we should not be taking money home that is not disclosed or going through payroll at the county level. But in working with the clerks that came to see me, I've been willing to accept that there are some counties that do this differently and that there is room for flexibility in the supplements that are currently going out. So that $7,500 number is based on what we had done previously for the probate judges on vital records. And in addition, the amendment that I mentioned, which the senator from the 28th will likely want to speak about, that gives each county a lot of flexibility as to how they both split up the money between the county and the clerk's office, but also whether they want to raise that supplement.
Does the Senator further yield?
Yes.
And is it not further true that this bill appears to be one that the county commissioners, the Board of Commissioners in a lot of counties are looking at in the same way that we've talked about salary supplements as a way to bring more revenue back into their county outside of what these clerks do on a day-to-day basis? Is that not further true?
I think that would be true if the money were being disclosed to the county and it was going through payroll like other income. Thank you for the question.
Further question. Would it not be as helpful for the folks that work in the clerks' offices to have the ability to raise the salaries of their staff since they're generating these fees? When I read the bill, it appears that does not appear to be a practice because those employees are regulated by the county and they have no burden to raise the salary of the employees that are in these offices. So by virtue of this legislation, the county just gets to pocket the money and the workers don't have any recourse. Is that not true?
Actually, that's not true because, as I mentioned, the supplement, which is included in the bill, allows for the first $7,500 to go directly to the clerk after it runs through payroll.
I was speaking more so, Senator, in terms of the employees that works in the clerk's offices who could receive a much larger salary, but we're not making the counties raise the salaries of the people that work in the clerk's office through this bill. Would you not believe that to be true?
Yes, but I would also support that the county should raise those clerks' salaries. This bill does not require that. That would be a different piece of legislation.
Further question?
Sure.
But Senator, do you not agree that that could have been done in this legislation if truly we were concerned about the salaries of employees and what they made?
I was trying to keep this bill narrow, and so I chose not to try to dictate to the counties about that particular issue.
Senator from the 17th, you wish to rise for a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the Senator yield?
Yes, I sure do, for my sweet mate.
Well, Senator, based on the amendment that I've read and looking at your bill, if the amendment is adopted, wouldn't local counties get the final say as to how this money is divided up, or also the local delegations, which would be the people in this body representing those counties?
That is absolutely correct. There's a lot of flexibility for both the split of how the money is divided between the county and the clerk's office and also the supplement, and that can be negotiated.
Do you further yield?
Yes.
So if we adopt the amendment with the bill, we'll maintain local control, and also in this body we'll have local control with our delegations as to how to address this matter.
I think that's absolutely what the amendment does. And it does address all the concerns that I've heard from the clerks and gives flexibility to adjust the formula.
Senator from the 21st, you wish to rise for a question?
Yes, Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Most clerks, at least in my county, they use the same auditors that the Board of Commissioners use, so the money is disclosed. You keep saying the money's not disclosed. It must be disclosed, and you know how much money your clerk made. How'd you find that out?
Their salary is certainly disclosed, Senator, but in one of my counties, the money was not being disclosed to the county and was going directly to a bank account.
Okay, thank you.
Senator from the 23rd, you wish to rise for a question?
Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Just a point of clarification. The funds that were deposited directly into those bank accounts, were they 1099 or were taxes in any way addressed with those funds?
The money obviously would have to be taxed.
But, well, I would say it'd have to be reported, but since it's not considered further yield.
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that if it were not reported through the county and handled via payroll, the county would not have reported that income?
That's correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Senator from the 8th, you wish to rise for the question?
Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Senator, is it not true that these clerks, in performing the task of doing passport applications, that it's voluntary? They don't have to do it?
That's correct.
So is it not true then, Senator, that it puts the clerks in a favorable position with their county governments in negotiating perhaps favorable terms?
I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Senator, I'm going to yield well.
Yeah,
Mr. President, thank you.
Senator from the 22nd, do you wish to speak on this measure?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just be brief with this and just go through a little bit of chronological order on some things and just basically say, and I just don't think we're really ready to proceed right now to go forward. And here's why. Because we're moving fast, really because of news headlines. So let's kind of look at what our statute says, number one. So it says that provided for under the laws of the United States or regulations promulgated pursuant to such laws shall be provided such laws or regulations as personal compensation to the clerk of Superior Court for the performance of those duties. That was the status of the law. That was the law of the state of Georgia. That came from federal law, where Genesis came from. And that's been the law for the state of Georgia. And it clearly says it is for personal compensation to the clerk. It is true, without a doubt, that in 2012, these same issues were brought up. In 2012, though, it's very interesting that words and language that was used was, should clerks have personal compensation? Clerks use this as supplemental income. Clerks have an opportunity to have supplemental income. The language that was used was one that was very straightforward and described the bill or described what was happening in a real coherent way, supplemental income. And that bill or those conversations died. 2017, ACCG did a survey of clerks. And what they found was that those who self-reported, 33 clerks self-reported and said that they were receiving supplements for their personal income. When we actually look at it, I think it's actually a total of 75 who receive a supplement for personal income. And so we have been moving, as this is, looking at it periodically, having some discussions about it, saying that we really don't know how to figure it out, and we've gone forward. But then all of a sudden, in 2022, the language changed. The language changed, and the language became clerks are lining their pockets. The language changed to it's legal, but barely. The language changed to one of schemes of getting money. And based on that harsh language, based on that type of language, which implies so many different things, and only focusing on 3 counties, quite frankly, we now rushed in here for this. That's why I say we're not ready to go forward on it. Because it was that language that pushed us to this particular point. It was 3 counties that we looked at to push us to this particular point, when, as my friend from the second says, it's a total of 75. There's other counties that are going to be impacted. Disclosures, first of all, many counties actually do disclose that through audits that have been mentioned. When we start talking about going through payroll, that may be very well an idea we could look at. But then to say we're going to cap at $7,500, those are just numbers that we're just using. Quite frankly, there were potential amendments that would come forward to talk about 20% or 40%. Any numbers that we use are not really based on any real facts or evidence, quite frankly. It's just based on, we're just trying to figure out an answer to something that has been, number one, in statute, number two, has been discussed and moved forward on, and said we don't really know how to go forward on it, so let's just continue. And all of a sudden, 3 clerks in the metro area are put on front and center, and language used about lining pockets and schemes and things of that nature, and we come running in here to try to figure all of this out, which has not been figured out since 2012. So my point is very simple. There's no heroes or villains in this type of situation, but you can sometimes move too fast. Whatever the reasons why it died before it died, the bottom line is we don't need to go forward based on headlines, based on that kind of language. And that's the only reason why we're here, and we know it. We're not here because anyone found this statute and said, wow, I really don't like it. We're here because the newspapers and other persons put in their headlines schemes and lining pockets, and it's legal, but it's barely legal, and all this kind of stuff. That's why we're here. And the idea of local control, man, that's laughable at this point. No one should come in this well anymore talking about local control. That doesn't even exist. So all of us from this point should stop even saying that. So that doesn't even exist in this body. So I would just say, as I mentioned, I can't say there's necessarily a hero or a villain in this, but I do know we're going too fast, and we need to put on the brakes, defeat this particular bill, any of the amendments coming forward, possibly do a study committee. Let's actually look at this in a coherent way, not one being pushed by language that is incendiary and has a lot of different tones under that language, because it wasn't used in 2012. I read you the type of language that was used then. Wasn't used in 2017. That's what we should be pushed to this based on that. And with that, Mr. President, I yield for any questions.
You do have a question, Senator. Senator from the 43rd, you wish to ask a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the Senator yield?
Yes.
Based on your presentation, I followed it very closely, and you mentioned language that was used and was not used. I asked the author, and I got an answer, but I'm asking you, why do you think the language changed?
Well, you have many reasons. Number one, you have meaningless clicks, quite frankly. And then number two, the language I can't get into people's heads, but I will say this. The persons, 75 clerks are getting this. 3 persons that were basically blasting it on the media. The one constant theme is, number one, they're from the Metro, and I'm not from the Metro either, my friend from the second. And number 3, they were all African-American women. Now, we don't control the media. We don't control that. But that is what happened. And that's not right. But that's a media issue. It's also a larger issue in our society. But my point is very simple. Whatever their motives are, the motives of the media are irrelevant. We know why we're here. It's because of that language. It's not because some scholar came to us and said, this is why we're going forward. It's because somebody thinks they found something. They didn't find anything. The media didn't find anything because, as I said, all this stuff is, and you can Google it and find conversations in 2012, find the conversations in 2017. So there's no eureka moment. They didn't find anything. But they just decided to make a big deal about it. And that was the consistent thing about the 3 people that have been put out there like this, and that was unfortunate. But that's a media issue. The issue we're dealing with right here is that I know that's why we're here. The language is in this statute, it's been in there. It's there. And what's brought us here is headlines, and we can be better than that. And what I'm saying is, certainly when we talked about disclosure, absolutely, no problem with that. But let's figure out how to get that done. But as I said, many counties say, as the senator from 21st, he says there is disclosure. But let's understand where that is and where it's not. When we start talking about going through payroll, fine. But when we start talking about caps or percentages, we're just making that up, quite frankly. It's not based on anything. So let's just hold off and then move forward later. And we may come back to the same place. I don't know. I do know this. I know why we're here today, and it's unfortunate.
Thank you.
Senator from the 9th, you wish to ask a question?
Senator, do you yield?
Yes.
Senator, is it not true this is a constitutional elected office?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have similar constitutional elected officers?
I believe we also have tax commissioner's office also has similar kind of allowances that they can do too.
So maybe you can help me understand why we are going after this particular constitutional officer. If this body remembers, we had a similar issue about supplemental income with our tax commissioners. We did put a cap on it, but we made it 50%. They couldn't go 50% of their salary.
Correct.
Is that not true?
Yes.
Okay. And it passed out of this body. Is
Right.
that not true? Okay. So why are we treating this constitutional officer any differently than we would say our tax commissioner?
That I cannot, I do not know, but I will say this, we shouldn't be doing that. And at the same time, that kind of conversation had been going on for a few years. This is something that just popped up in December or November, whenever these stories started coming out. So the tax commission conversation is one that can't carry on. So when we came to that 50% number, at some level, we did it on a rational basis. Some conversation, real conversation is taking place. That has not happened here. Quite frankly, we just said 50% today, we may just be making that up. We may just say, let's just do it like tax commissioner. Still not coming from a real rational conversation. It's coming where we are today is just let's rush and do something so we can placate the news sources.
Does the senator further yield?
Yes.
Do you have an explanation why we didn't, if this was such a problem this year, it was a problem 10 years ago, why we would not have fixed it?
I think the explanation is it affects more than just 3 clerks. And I would say that probably other clerks around the state said, you know, this is also going to impact us, and maybe you don't realize this in the other conversations that took place. And in person, I wasn't here, but in person said, you know what, you're right, and we don't really got a grasp of all of this. Because when it came up, most likely the person said, this affects more than just Atlanta. It's more impact than you may understand. And so a person said, okay, we'll move off of it. Now that we have an understanding that there's not 3 clerks in the metro area, 75, let's really all go out, talk to our individual clerks, find out the best way to handle this particular situation, not being pushed with that kind of language behind us, trying to prove a point. Let's do that in a more rational way. That's all I'm saying. Very simple.
Does the senator refer to you?
Yes.
And do you recall any news outlet or media story prior to this year that would have similar derogatory language against any other clerk?
No.
Okay. No one was called a thief or?
No. Yeah, it just started, from what I can find. And what kind of brought that to my attention was when we saw some of the language that was taking place. I said, well, no one knew about this. And that's when you then go find out that previous conversations, you find out about 2017. And that's when I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let's hold off. Let's just wait and see where we can go from here. With that, Mr. President, I yield the will.
You have no further questions, Senator. Senator from the 28th, I call upon you to speak to the amendments, and Senator from the 30th, they'll be next. Senator from 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we all know, up here as a bill moves along, it's a process, and we hear from both sides of every issue. And so what we try to do is we try to come to compromise. And I know in this world, in today's political world, compromise has become a bad word, but it's something that we as a state can need to get back to. So I've simply tried to split the baby here. And I've tried to do that in a couple of ways. Number one, on Amendment 1, and I've got 2 out there, 1 and 1A. Number one, simply what we're doing here, if you'll look down on lines 9 and 10, we're essentially going to let our clerks and our local counties negotiate out their own deal. And then Amendment 1A, we're actually going to raise that cap from $7,500 to $20,000. And I think that is based on what I've heard in the hallways and based on conversations we've had in this chamber. I think that is something that I hope that we can all stomach, and we can all move along and get to this bill to a better place so that when it gets to the House, it can pass. So with that, I'll yield for questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator from the 30th, do you wish to rise to speak on this bill?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start with saying I firmly support local control. That's for you. Hey, the reason I'm up here is no, I'm not angry about this bill. Somebody asked me that earlier. I just don't agree with it. I don't agree with it because you're looking at it. These people that are in the clerk's office or in other offices, you know, we have. Let me just go down the line here. You have 79 clerks in the Superior Court that do this. You have 75 post offices that do this. You have 10 libraries that do this. You have 8 probate courts that do this. And you have 4 others. The University of Georgia, Georgia State Clarkson Campus, City of Sugar Hill, and the Atlanta Passport Mega Center. They all do this. And there is a rigorous program that all these people have to go through to be able to work on your passport. It is a multi-week process that has to go through the State Department at the U.S. level. At the end of that process, they have to sit for an exam. At that exam, they have to get 91% or higher to pass that test. Once they pass that test, and what hadn't been mentioned here so far, is they are technically at that point an officer of the Department of State, eligible to issue passports. So they have an additional duty other than what they're doing in their clerk's office or their probate office or the University of Georgia or Georgia State or in a library or wherever. So then the question comes up, and I've heard several of these. Yes, but they're doing it on municipality or county time. Absolutely they are. And if we want to address how that is recompensated from the clerks or the probate judges or whomever, then I think that's a fair statement to make. If you want to, in Terrell County, ensure that that clerk is replacing that one ream of paper and paying part of that copier fee, then that's something we should talk about. The shock that the most populated counties in the state are the ones that are earning the highest income off of passport fees is amazing to me that you're shocked. There's more people there. There's more people that are going to get a passport. So you shouldn't be shocked. You want to put a cap on this thing? And I never agree with the senator from the 22nd, but I do on this one. Take a little time and look at it, because this is a reactionary bill. I'm looking at, that was one of the other things I heard. I don't understand why they're getting extra compensation. They're just doing their job. It's not their job. Nowhere in there is it their job. It is an extra benefit that they are providing for the citizens of a county that they don't have to. So when I was coming up here, I was thinking, this is going to be a Don Quixote moment for me. I am jousting at windmills. Because there is no way that I'm going to sway enough votes to have this thing go down, or to at least have it so it's reconsidered and further examined. That being said, it's still worth the fight to me. I want to make sure that we're doing stuff right and not doing stuff reactionary. They make too much money is another thing that I heard. They make too much money. All right. When are y'all going to start coming to me, and when are we going to expand this so that we're assessing what everybody's income is across the state and determining how much is too much money? When are we going to, how are we going to set up that committee? Because they've tried that at a couple different places. I don't want Georgia to become Venezuela. Okay, so I heard that one. The county can decide how much the clerks, they negotiate together. So you're going to have an entity that's not party to the money that is in a direct relationship with the State Department now negotiate how much money comes to the county for them to spend on projects that they want to spend. That Bowden, where I'm from, that's the fox guarding the hen house. That's the fox saying, trust me, I'll take care of the hens. Just pass this. I don't see it happening. I'm not sure that we've spent enough time working with the rural counties. I've got 2 urban, suburban counties. I have 2 rural counties. We have targeted this thing at a small section of the state. And I'm just begging you, let's slow the roll here. Let's look at it. Because there's a couple other things that, I don't want us to impact. Y'all know that if I've got a passport and it is 3 months from expiration, I can't travel on it? Everybody knows that, right? You know, if I stop doing these at the county level and I have to send off to the State Department, which is the next thing, that's 11 or 12 weeks. on that turnaround. So now I'm at 6 months before I can do this. I don't know, y'all are much better organized than I am. I don't really plan international travel 6 months out all the time. So I made the Don Quixote reference a little while ago. What I want to make sure that we're doing is we're not creating a Pyrrhic victory. And for those of y'all that are not students of the ancient Roman wars, and I know everybody in here is, a Pyrrhic victory is you have won the battle, but you have lost the war. We are going to win the public relations battle if we vote on this. But how many of our rural counties are going to say, this is not worth my time? And then where are those people going to go? Please, I ask you to vote against this bill and the amendments, because I don't think we have vetted this thing near long enough. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Recognize the senator from the 1st. Speak to the bill. State your inquiry, Senator.
Isn't it true that the senator from Bowden knows whereof he speaks?
I think the senator from Bowden knows Bowden well.
Wow. I certainly had not planned to talk on this bill. Talking about not worth my time. Goodness gracious. Let's look at ourselves. 400,000 extra, unplanned. Wouldn't we all love a 400,000 extra over a couple of years? Wow, direct deposit, not being transparent, direct deposit to your account. Come on, guys. That's certainly not worth our time. And I know my colleague, this is not something that she has just embraced and worked on. As you know, she works on things tirelessly, works with multiple different partners on this. I mean, goodness gracious. I will tell you, I had never heard that anybody in the state worked with the federal government so well before in the past. Oh, my goodness. In fact, each one of us has 14 congressmen and 2 U.S. senators. And despite what our former speaker just said a minute ago, they can also expedite those. And guess what? We elect those congressmen and senators. You know how much they charge for those? 0. Oh my goodness. I just had never heard of anybody using anybody else but the federal officials who actually do U.S. passports. And they're doing, and the folks who are doing it locally, I guess, are doing it out of the goodness of their hearts and only making, 400,000 over a couple of years. Mr. President, I agree. This is not worth my time. Thank you.
Senators yielded the well. Senator from the 37th, you at least wish to speak on the bill.
Mr. President, I hope I don't spend much time here, but I want to bring this back down to reality. This very simple proposition before us today does not end the process of local governments, clerks' offices processing passports. What this does is it takes, as you can see in the 40s lines of the bill, it takes the money, it allows it to be used by the clerk's office, allows it to be used by the county general fund, so the employees that are processing these passports, putting their hands on these documents and actually doing the work, the revenue generated actually goes for them where it should go. So make no mistake about it. This doesn't end the process of collecting a fee for processing passports at the local level. What this does is it addresses something that should have been passed in 2012. I was a member of the State House in 2012, and will tell you this bill should have passed back then. There's no excuse it didn't pass. But here we stand today in 2023 with a proposition before us where we have individual elected officials who are compensated for their services, whose employees are processing passports, but they themselves are putting handsome amounts of dollars in their pocket as individual income. This bill doesn't take away the ability for the county to collect revenue to fund the employees that are doing the work. This bill does exactly that. This bill collects the revenue from passports and spends it on the employees who are doing the work. What this bill ends is the ability for an elected official to use the work of the employees, public employees, in the clerk's office, and then harvest money from that for their personal income. In our county in particular, as the senator alluded to, $425,000 of personal individual income over 2 short years. Small counties, I trust it's less money, and with the amendments that are being offered, it will be less money. But what I'm telling you today, senators, is that if we ask members of the public, do you believe that such a thing even exists in Georgia? That public employees can process passports in their clerk's offices, and then the clerk themselves can harvest money from that, not for the county, not for their own budget, but for their own personal income? How many of our citizens would even believe that kind of thing even exists today? I bet you 80+% of our constituents would never believe that exists as a legal thing in our state. It won't if we fix that. All this bill does, ladies and gentlemen, in the Senate, is to allow the employees who are doing the work to have the funds collected to go to pay for county general fund and the clerk's office's operating fund to pay for the services they're providing, nothing more, and putting an end to hopefully the language that was raised. I won't mention specific senators, but the language has changed from that of substance, saying this is being done to placate news sources, to prove a point, or using derogatory language. This is none of the above. This is substantive work, should have been done by this body and by the House in 2012, and it wasn't. Let's not let this go another 11 years. Let's let the dollars that are being used by the employees that process passports to go for them, not to their elected officials harvesting this as personal income. And with that, Mr. President, I ask for your support for Senate Bill 19. Vote on the amendments as your conscience leads, and let's put a green vote up for SB 19. I yield the will.
Senators yielded well. Senator from the 56, I'd like to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know the day is long, so I will be brief. I love everyone here and their comments, and a healthy debate is just that. It's healthy. One thing was brought up, though, that said that this may have unintended consequences, and somewhere in rural Georgia it would not be worth the time to process these. Well, if it's not worth their time, they should resign immediately or be elected from office never again, because it is a role of a public servant to do just that, to serve. And I'll give you a good example. How many times did your legislative assistant get a call to solve a problem for the federal government, for the county school system or the city school system, a local municipality? Hundreds and hundreds of times a year. Should you get extra pay because your administrative assistant solved a problem in another area of government? Of course they shouldn't. Folks, some of these people are getting paid more than the President of the United States. That is just crazy. If you get elected to a job, you know what the salary is when you put your name on the ballot to run for that. And if you win the office, congratulations, do your job. But to demand extra money for doing your job is awfully silly. We can do better. I want to congratulate the senator from the 32nd for addressing a major issue, bringing transparency and oversight to government, which is exactly what we should be doing. Thank you. I yield the will.
Senator from the 23rd, wish to speak on the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm probably the only one in this body that has ever provided passport services to constituents without a fee. While I had the privilege of serving in the U.S. House, I assisted hundreds of constituents to receive a passport in an expedited fashion in some cases, but always supporting their needs. Now, I'll tell you what, my staff did that work for me, and the taxpayers of this country paid my staff, and I took zero. I want you to know a passport's work is a duration of 10 years. Now, I agree with my good friend, the senator from the 30th. I occasionally let mine expire or get too close, and I have to renew it. But once I've done it once in 10 years, it's done for 10 years, right? So we can deal with this problem without having to burden the constituents with a fee. I have no problem with $35. I have no problem with local officials assisting in that effort, but I have a problem with them putting those dollars in their pockets, and I support Senate Bill 19. Thank you.
Senator from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, today I rise to make the same statement that I always make. Savannah is not the metro area, it's not Atlanta, it's Chatham County. And I tried to get a next day passport, and you know where you got to go to get a next day passport? You got to come to Atlanta. You know what happened on my way to Atlanta? I hit Atlanta Hartsville, I missed the appointment. They're done by 11, 10 if you're not there on time. You're done. You can't get it next day. You got to call your congressman or U.S. senator to try to get another appointment. Well, it's a 3-hour and 30-minute drive without traffic, 4 hours with traffic to get to Atlanta. Flight may cost you $600, $700 to get to Atlanta. Maybe it's easier for folks to get to Atlanta because you're closer to Atlanta. But I'm on I-16, and I had to get to Atlanta to try to get a passport. Long story short, I couldn't get the passport. I had to cancel the trip. I couldn't make it work. I didn't have the time to fly to Atlanta to get a next-day passport. I had to call my Superior Court clerk and ask Madam Clerk if she could help me get my passport expedited because I went to the U.S. Post Office. They are booking 6 months out. Needed a passport before 6 months. And so I had to call my clerk and ask her if she'd get me an appointment. She said, Derek, we'll take care of you absolutely. I got to meet her team. I got to see how her operation works. I learned about the process because I had to go to her and ask her to help me get this passport. Got it back. Well, just like the federal government, they sent it back. I got the passport expedited in an envelope, but guess what? They kept the birth certificate. So now you talk about the issues of trying to get a replacement birth certificate. Well, my county, they don't do them on Fridays. Well, I'm in the General Assembly Monday through Thursday. And so when we think about legislation and the unintended consequences, again, this is about the metro area. This is not about smaller counties and communities. My clerk doesn't even take a supplement. She spends the money on staff morale. She spends it on food and lunches and different things for the office. But it is the intention of this body to legislate a few clerks that'll have an impact on the rest of us. And I don't know if you are in a rural community or not, but I want to tell you what it's like trying to get to Atlanta to get a passport. In some communities, the closest post office may be 5 counties over. And so what's the deal with this passport deal? We need to think it through thoroughly. Don't try to legislate heavy-handed to impact a few counties, because some of us are in communities where people do have to make a drive. And if we want to be intentional about representing the entirety of this state, when we look at it, hey, I'm going to tell you one thing. The rural areas of this state didn't vote for my party. They voted for yours, colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And if you're going to legislate and impact those folks in those rural communities, we always like to come and talk about how we love rural Georgia. And we are going to do something for rural Georgia. But I'm going to tell you, this is going to impact rural Georgians, because when they go to their clerk and their clerk says, I'm not doing it anymore because I can't get along with the county commission, I can't make this work, guess what? The clerk's going to tell them it was your legislator, your state senator that did that. And just like we always say, elections have consequences, I want you to remember, you don't live and legislate in Atlanta. There are only very few legislators in the metro area. The rest of us are outside of the metro area. And I urge my colleagues outside of the metro area not to vote for legislation to impact a metro area. Think about your folks in your home district, the constituents that voted for you and sent you here to vote for them. If this is an issue, we truly can work with those clerks to make it better. But this issue wasn't worked with. My clerk came to meet with the author of this bill to try to work on it. She drove 4 hours to get here and couldn't work on this bill. So don't tell me that we tried to work it out and make it work. No, we came with a heavy hand because we had the intention of who we were going to target and who we were going to go after with this bill, and we did it. Now, colleagues, I'm just going to ask you, vote with your conscience and vote with your constituents in your district in mind, because I want you to know that the folks back home, when the clerks tell them that you did this, they're going to let them know that you did it, and they're going to remember that as they move forward. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. You know, I think we're going to like having you in this chamber, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Hold on. Senator from the 53rd, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true, Mr. President, that I believe we'd be better off if we debated House Bill 18, the budget, like we've debated Senate Bill 19 over passport fees?
Senator, I know you're passionate about that, and you probably got a good point. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. I ask the senator from the 32nd if you'd like to close the debate, even though I think this thing has been debated pretty well right now. But
Thank you, Mr. President. You never know what's going to be controversial around here, but I appreciate everybody's points of view. And what I'm really trying to do with this bill is bring some transparency to this, make sure that these monies are disclosed. And because we're using county resources, I feel that this personal income thing is marginal, but I'm willing to compromise, and that's what I've done by accepting the supplement amount that was proposed in the amendment and giving the counties and the clerks the ability to negotiate basically whatever they want to. They just have to be able to agree. So I would ask for your favorable consideration, and I'll yield the will. Thank you.
thank you, Senator. The question is on the adoption of Amendment 1A by the senator from the 28th. Amendment 1A. Is there objection? There is objection. All those in favor of Amendment 1A signify by voting the yes switch. All those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. Trying to work. On the passage of the amendment, the yeas are 34 and the nays are 18, and Amendment 1A is adopted. Now the question is on the adoption of Amendment 1 by the senator from the 28th. Amendment 1 by the senator from the 28th. Is there objection to this amendment? Objection? Objections from the senator from the 7th. All those in favor of the amendment signify by voting the yay switch. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the amendment, yeas are 32, nays are 20, and Amendment 1 is adopted. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machines. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 34, the nays are 19. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Moving on to the rules calendar, last bill of the day is Senate Bill 170. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 170 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to elementary and secondary education so as to provide for the qualification and selection of students to advise the State Board of Education and local boards of education. The Senate Committee on Education and Youth recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon of the 45th District. Chairman, Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 56th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor to bring Senate Bill 170, the Student and Teachers Speak Act. Very brief background and context. The senator from the 32nd and I were visiting some of the local high schools in Cobb County last year, meeting with students, one of our favorite things to do. During that conversation, I always give those students a challenge and a homework assignment to come up with a great idea for Georgia, whether it's a small idea or a grand sweeping idea, and then to please email me so we can work on it together, to know that they truly have a voice no matter what their age, and to get them more excited about government and making a difference. One such student did just that. Jake Hayes sent me an email shortly after with an idea to have representation of students on the state school board and local school boards. I gave him a lot of homework to do after that, to go meet with various elected officials, appointed officials. He did an extraordinary amount of homework. He worked with all the right parties. And I'm proud today, after he helped present this in committee, to bring in front of you this bill. This simply says that students who are 16 or older between the 11th and 12th grade can apply through a process to write an essay. Those essays will be brought up regionally, ultimately to the state school superintendent, who will choose the top 3. And then the governor will select the winner, who will be an ex officio, non-voting member of the state school board, to provide a student's perspective. Very similar to the great work we did here as a legislature, doing that for the Teacher of the Year, who also holds a similar position. It also encourages our local school boards to do the same. What a great way to get young people involved in education and policy. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I will yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The reporting of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. I recognize the Majority Leader for a motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 1 p.m. Wednesday, March 1st.
The Majority Leader has moved. The Secretary, read the announcements, please.
Committee meetings have been moved back half an hour. The Rules Committee meeting will happen upon adjournment in 450 of the Capitol. The Children and Families Committee meeting will happen at 1:30 p.m. in 307 CLOB. The Banking and Financial Institutions Committee meeting will happen at 1:30 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. The Reapportionment and Redistricting Committee meeting will happen at 2:30 in 450 of the Capitol. The Education and Youth Committee meeting will happen at 3 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. The Retirement Committee meeting will happen at 3:30 p.m. in Mezzanine 1 of the Capitol. The Regulated Industries and Utility Committee meeting will happen at 4:30 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. The Judiciary Committee meeting is canceled. The Ethics Committee meeting will happen at 6 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol, and the Higher Education Committee meeting will happen at 7 p.m. in 307 CLOB. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 16th, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that Senate Rule 3.12 be suspended to allow for a bill to be read and assigned to committee, SB 274.
Is there unanimous? Senator has moved that a bill be read for the first time and be assigned to a committee. Let's read the caption.
Senate Bill 274 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 30 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to handicapped persons so as to create the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired, to transfer the direction and supervision of Georgia Industries for the Blind from the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency to the Commission. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is the objection to the Senator having it first read here and assigned to a committee? Good. I appreciate that. So we'll assign that to Government Oversight Committee, Senator. All right, the motion is on the floor by the Majority Leader for us to adjourn until tomorrow at 10 a.m. March 1. Is there objection to that motion? At 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, too, by the way. Tomorrow, 1 o'clock. March 1, 1 o'clock. Did I say 10 a.m.? I apologize. 1 o'clock tomorrow. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. Enjoy the rest of the day. We're adjourned.